Hi folks, and welcome to the Is It Worth It for the Panzer IV-S. Now, I'm just going to be calling it the PZ4S for the rest of this review because my German isn't good enough to keep on saying Panzerkampfwagen 4 Schmolterm. So that's it, I give up. Sorry to all the German viewers out there, but I'm just going to be calling it the Panzer IV-S or the PC4S. But this is a Tier 6 German medium tank. It's currently available, and I'm going to stress the word currently because it's being removed from the game in about a week and a half, so I'm hoping to get this review out as soon as I can. But it's currently available from the tech tree for 3,750 gold or from the gift shop. And the question we're going to be asking today is this tank worth 3,750 gold? And as per usual, we're going to start with the history of the tank, and this is going to be very easy because the Panzer IV-S doesn't have any history. Very, very little. This never even made it into prototype, didn't even make it into blueprints. The Panzer IV-S was a concept put forward by the Krups company in late 1944. Basically, the Panzer IV was being phased out, it was considered obsolete, and ways were being looked at to see whether or not they could extend the life cycle of the Panzer IV. One of the concepts was putting a Panther turret on the tank, but it was going to be very, very impractical. Because, as I say, the chassis or the Panzer IV was mainly obsolete by the end of 1944, but also it was impractical because the Panther turret was far too heavy for the Panzer IV chassis to support it, so extensive modification would have had to have been made to support this particular turret. Also, the turret was just too big. The turret ring on the chassis of the Panzer IV was too small to be able to mount this particular turret, so again extensive modification would have been required to even be able to place this turret on the tank. Too much work involved for a tank that was being phased out and was obsolete anyway, so it never made it any further than concept stage, and that's pretty much the history. This tank does have some in-game history, however, because this tank was not a premium tank originally. This tank existed as the Panzer IV at Tier 5 for the Germans in the standard tech tree. Prior to patch 8.0, a lot of people had this tank. They had the standard Panzer IV, but they were using the Schmolturm turret and this gun, and it was a very, very good tank. In fact, at the time, I think a lot of people who weren't using premium accounts, or who didn't have premium tanks, were keeping this tank and playing this tank as a moneymaker to support credit making for higher tier tanks. It was one of these tanks that was in that sweet spot. It made a lot of credits and could do very, very well. As a tier 5, it was probably even considerably a little bit overpowered. It was a tier lower than it is now, and it had a better engine, so it was a little bit faster, a little bit more maneuverable. However, Wargaming removed it, and a lot of people were sad, including myself, because I was only grinding this tank at the time it was removed. I began my Panzer IV grind at tier 5 with this turret and with this gun, and shortly before I finished the grind, the tank was removed and replaced with the current version of the Panzer IV in-game. So that shows you when I started playing World of Tanks. But after 8.0, the tank was no longer available, and then a couple of patches later, Wargaming reintroduced the Panzer IV with the Schmolturm as a premium tank, and they moved it up one tier from tier 5 to tier 6. So I suppose if you are an older World of Tanks player, then you'll be familiar with the tank and how it plays, how the gun handles. But for newer players who've joined since 8.0, this is probably an original tank for you. And for a long time, the Panzer IV-S was the only Tier 6 premium medium tank you could get in the game. However, Wargaming introduced the Fury more recently, and then the T-3485M more recently, and most recently in the last patch, they introduced the Cromwell B and the Rudy. So there are some premium competitors, but if I'd done this review about 6 months ago, there wouldn't have been any. So we're going to be comparing the Panzer IV-S against the Fury, the T-3485M, the Cromwell B, and the Rudy. And at 730 hit points, it fits pretty much in the middle. It gets more hit points than the 85M or the Rudy does, but not by by much, just 10, and it gets 20 less hit points than the Fury or the Cromwell B. But hit point wise, it's not great, it's not bad, it's pretty average. It weighs about 30 tons for me, and that's pretty much average across all of these tanks. It's slightly lighter than some of the tanks up here, but it's slightly heavier than the Cromwell B. But most of these tanks come in at around 30 tons. And then we come to the first negative for the Panzer IV's, which is its engine power. It only gets a 300 horsepower engine. That's significantly worse, almost twice as bad as any of the other tanks up here. All the other tanks get a 500 horsepower engine, with the exception of the Cromwell, which is over twice as good at 650. So 300 horsepower, considering the tank weighs roughly the same as the other tanks, is not good. So this tank is sluggish, it doesn't accelerate well, and even though it gets a top speed of 48 kilometers an hour, which actually looks quite good, compared to the other tanks, it's actually on the slow side. Only the Fury is slower. However, because of that slow engine power, the Panzer IV's struggles to reach 48 kilometers an hour, at least unless you're going downhill, whereas the Fury can easily reach 42 kilometers an hour top speed. So it's sluggish, and even though the top speed doesn't look great, you're probably going to be doing at most about 30 kilometers an hour, even though you get about 48 on its top speed. The traverse speed is also a negative for the tank. It comes in at 36 degrees per second, which is the slowest traverse speed of any of the tanks up here. The hull traverse is not good, so it's sluggish, it's got poor traverse speed, and then we take a look at the turret traverse speed, and again we have got very, very poor turret traverse speed, especially compared to any of the other tanks. This is not a medium tank, even though it says it's a medium tank. It doesn't have the acceleration, it doesn't have the traverse speed, it doesn't have the turret traverse speed. It is unlike any of the other medium tanks up here. The Panzer IV's is kind of a little bit different, and we're going to get into that in a while, but moving on. The view range on the Panzer IV's is very, very good. It comes in at 370 meters, which matches the Fury, is slightly better than the Rudy or the Cromwell B, and is significantly better than the 85M. View range is one of this tank's biggest strengths, and the signal range is pretty good too. It's got the best signal range of any of the tanks up here. When it comes to armor, the Panzer IV's doesn't have a very good reputation. A lot of guides and a lot of reviews will tell you that this tank has no armor, and I would agree. I think the hull armor on this tank is pretty poor. However, I like to keep things in context, as you probably know by now, and compared to all the other premium medium tanks at tier 6, the hull armor is actually very good from the front. It gets more frontal armor than any of the other tanks up here. It even gets 5mm more frontal armor than the T-34-85M does, and that's considered a armored medium tank. So the hull armor is not as bad looking on paper when we compare it to the other premium tanks. However, the side and rear of the hull are very, very poor. It is a tier 5 chassis. It is identical to the tier 5 Panzer IV in-game. So yes, while it is on paper better armor than any of the other tanks up here, I still don't think the armor is very good, but like I say, it's a tier 5 chassis on a tier 6 tank. However, things change when we take a look at the turret, because it may be a tier 5 tank, but it's a tier 7 turret, so we get 120mm of frontal armor, 60 on the sides and 60 on the rear. So the side and rear is pretty comparable to most of the tanks up here, but the frontal armor of 120 on the turret is very, very good, much, much better than any of the other tanks up here. And while we're on the subject of armor, I better mention the side skirts. Yes, these side skirts are simply eye candy. They don't perform any function in-game at the moment. The Panzer IV's uses exactly the same hitbox as the Panzer IV. So these are simply just a decoration. They aren't anything else. However, in a future patch, I don't know what patch it's going to be, Wargaming are talking about bringing out a high-definition model of the Panzer IV's. And in the high-definition model, these side skirtings will be counted as spaced armor, so they will protect you from heat shells, they will protect you from HE a little bit better than they currently do. Well, a lot better than they currently do, because they don't actually exist, they're simply there for decoration. So in the future, the armor, the side armor, is going to maybe get a little bit better on the Panzer IV's. We'll have to take it out for a playtest once that happens. So to sum up the tank, just looking at its basic in-game stats so far, Its hit points aren't bad, they're not good, but they're not bad. The engine power looks quite poor, so this is going to be a very, very sluggish tank. The power to weight ratio is not very good, and therefore attempting to reach its top speed is going to be very, very difficult. The traverse speed is poor for a medium tank. The turret traverse speed is very poor for a medium tank. The armor is not bad. Again, in context, it gets more frontal armor both on hull and turret than any other tier 6 premium medium tank does, but it's very, very flat, so it's still not great. And on top of that, the view range and the signal range seem to be quite good. So that just leaves the gun. This gun is going to be very familiar if you're familiar with German premium tanks, because it's a similar gun to the gun on the E25. It's also a similar gun to the gun on the Panther M10, and they are tier 7 premium tanks. However, those two tanks I've just mentioned get special matchmaking, and the Panzer IVS doesn't. So even though this is a similar gun to the gun on the other two premium tanks, this tank gets the gun a tier lower at tier 6, but yet can see the same tanks. The Panzer IVS does not get special matchmaking, so it will see tier 7s, it will see tier 8s, whereas the other two tanks using this similar gun will see tier 7s, tier 8s. So really the only advantage maybe the Panzer IVS gets is the fact that it is possible for this tank to get into an all tier 6 game. And the gun is very, very good at tier 7, and it's exceptionally good at tier 6 if it gets top tier. It's the standard gun, so you get a fast rate of fire. On the Panzer IVS, it is 13 rounds a minute, very, very good. But you do have the usual 150 millimeters of penetration and 135 alpha damage. So the alpha damage is a little bit low, but the rate of fire makes up for it, and the penetration is not fantastic. But considering this is a tier 6 and it does have the possibility of coming in at top tier in tier 6 games, I think the penetration is just fine on the gun. The other nice thing about this gun, just like it is on the E25, is it's quite accurate. It gets 0.35 accuracy, so you can snipe weak spots. Even if you do get this tank into tier 8 games, you are going to be able to hit weak spots with the accuracy on this gun. However, the aim time is a little bit low. I would like the aim time to have been a little bit better, considering it gets such a good rate of fire. It's not painfully bad, but the aim time could be better. I will admit that. But overall, I think it's a very, very good gun. I think it's a good gun on the E25. I think it's a good gun on the Panther M10. I think it's a very good gun on the Panzer IVS. Okay folks, let's check out this gun and this engine in action. We are here on Sacred Valley. You can see that the tank is struggling. This lack of engine power really, really does hurt the Panzer IVS. Rough ground, going through terrain features, struggling to get over 20 kilometers an hour, and then we hit the hill. And again, you're going to see that lack of engine power as we try to get to the top of this hill. Now, in this first replay, I'm going to be playing as a sniper. We're only going to be showing off the gun. Now, I was actually on another screen. I was on auto drive there, and I ran into the one and only flaming rock on the way up the hill, but let's get back to the game. This tank is so slow that I alt-tab, put it on auto drive, and then check out other websites while I'm trying to get into position. But we're struggling. You can see we're doing 10 kilometers, struggling even to reach 10 kilometers, trying to go uphill. It really does have a lack of engine power, but I'm going to be playing this as a sniper. In the second replay in this review, I'm going to be playing as a support tank, but in this one, we're only playing as a sniper. One of the biggest strengths of this tank is sniping, and that's all we're going to be doing in this game. It's a tier 6 game, so nice matchup for the tank, and in a tier 6 game, the gun is very, very, very good. So there we go, first shot in. Don't know if I got the track, but we're just going to try and track the KV-85, miss that shot. And sometimes the lack of alpha damage on this gun means you can't track enemy tanks, but KV-85 trying to escape, and there's the first kill of the game. Now, T-150, very heavily armored tier 6 heavy tank, but we're moving up. Don't have much to shoot at this T-3485. Someone else takes him out. But really, we're looking at the accuracy, we're looking at the rate of fire. Covenanter trying to fall back, but aim time a little bit slow, 2.3 seconds. But here we go, T-150 aiming at weak spots, and the shot hits the weak spot. Aiming down at him, able to put one into his turret. That shot goes a little bit high. But that shot goes exactly where I aim, again into the weak spot, and that guy gets taken out before I can get another shot in. But we're already up to 1,000 damage, or close to 1,000 damage. We're on 2 kills. Tanks are now appearing over to the north of the map, and again, look at the accuracy, able to snipe the Hellcat even though he was reversing. Shot on the move, missed that one. Let's try again because the rate of fire is good. Shot on the move, goes in. This gun is just, it's really, really good. There's kill number 3. So that was another 350 damage done to that Hellcat. PZ-4H in the distance, go for a blind shot. Don't know if it hit, can't remember. But this is playing the tank to its strengths, using its camo rating. Now, all of the games for this review, I don't think I was playing with a good crew. I think I was playing with a 100% crew, but with no skills. But I didn't hit the PZ-4H. He's still on full health. Missed my first shot. Aim carefully. And there we go. We're able to snipe his... not much to aim at, but we're able to snipe his turret. And there we go. Bounce on a PZ-3A. Shot on the move. We actually hit him. But unfortunately, we managed to bounce. But can't blame the accuracy of the gun for that. It hit what I was aiming at. M3 Lee in the distance, not much to shoot at, and M3 Lee behind me is preventing me from reversing, so I've got to go try and relocate this M3 Lee. Get out of my way! Missing out on damage here, but again, you can see how slowly this tank is able to maneuver here. Take me quite a while to relocate, get into a position to get more shots and more damage done. Okay, PZ-4 SFL, or PZ-SFL 4C in the distance. Have to blow away the cover, get one shot in, get another shot in, leave him on 9 health, and someone else takes him out. So the enemy team are down to 1 tank. And again, struggling, doing 10 kilometers an hour over rough ground, trying to get into a position where I can get a couple more shots done. I'm on 3 kills, 1,600 damage, and we don't have much to aim at, but again, look at the accuracy, able to snipe just the top of his tank. He's on 3 health, and we're able to get the rate of fire to finish him off. So this gun, it's rapid firing, it's accurate, and it can pack a punch, especially when it's top tier. So that was a first class game with a high caliber medal, and that's because I was playing it as a sniper. I was playing it passively. I was at the back of the map, I was letting my team spot enemy tanks for me, and then I was shooting them and doing the damage. But you can see damage wise, easily came top on damage, 4 kills, and the XP was very, very nice with a high caliber medal. This tank is a very, very good tank when you play it passively. It's got a very, very good gun, and it's also a very, very good money maker. 46,000 credits made with a premium account, and look at those ammo costs. 2,289 ammo costs, considering I fired 21 shots. The ammo is very, very cheap. It's a very good moneymaker, and it's a very good crew trainer. And that's just one way you can play the tank. You can play it passively, you can play it as a sniper, and it's very, very good at it. So let's talk about crew. And the Panzer IV is a very, very good crew trainer. It's exactly like all the other German premium medium tanks that are in the game. Lots of choices, with the exception of the 2 lower tier, tier 3s. But these all have the same crew layout, and that is a commander, a gunner, a driver, a radio operator, and a loader. It's a very, very balanced crew, and it basically means you can train up your German medium crews all the way from tier 4 at the Panzer IV-D, which has the same 5 crew members, or for example the PZ-3, which has the same 5 crew members. You can train them up the older line through the Panzer IV-H, the 3001H, the VK3002M, the Panther, Panther II, E50, E50M. These tanks all have the same 5 crew members, so trains up the old German medium line perfectly. And the newer German medium line, again, trains up the lower ones perfectly. For example, tanks like the Panzer III-4, the 3001D, and the 3002D, they all have 5 crew members. So again, perfect crew trainer on the newer medium line up to tier 7. Then things get a little bit different when we look at the higher tier, the newest line of medium tanks that were added, because the Indian Panzer, the Leopard PTA, and the final Leopard, the Leopard 1, all get 4 crew members. So you can train up a full crew for the newer German medium line in the Panzer IVS easily, but you are going to need an extra radio operator. But if you've been going up the lines, you should have a spare radio operator from the VK3002D, but if you don't, and you've gone up both medium lines, you should be able to borrow a radio operator from the original line. So yeah, it's a very, very good crew trainer, just like most German medium premium tanks are. No problems training up new crews, no problems helping existing crews get more XP. So let's talk about equipment, and there are quite a few equipment choices available for the Panzer IVS. Starting off with the toolbox, good on any tank. It is a viable piece of equipment if you're playing on a budget, but if you can afford other pieces of equipment, I would probably recommend those over the toolbox. But if you're playing, as I say, on a budget, toolbox is not going to do the tank any harm. Filling the tanks with CO2 is a complete waste of time on this tank because you don't want to get shot at, and the chances are if you're going to be shot at in this tank, you're going to die fairly soon afterwards. But yeah, I think it's a waste of credits. Better equipment you can put on the tank for 500,000 credits. Enhanced gun laying drive is viable. I don't use one because even though I think the aim time at 2.3 is not great, I don't think it causes me to miss enough shots to warrant putting it on. But I suppose it depends on how you play it. If you are having issues with your aim time because it is quite a fast rate of fire, then enhanced gun laying drive is viable, but I think there are better pieces of equipment. Coated optics are completely viable. You either play this tank as a sniper or you play this tank as a support tank. Stay with the main body of tanks, use them to tank the damage for you, pop out, take shots. If that's the style of play you're going to be using in the Panzer IVS, then maybe coated optics are a better choice over binocs. I do recommend one or the other, but I prefer binocs because it gets me a huge 485 meters of view range when I sit still and let the binocs kick in. I much prefer the binocs over the coated optics because if I do play as a support, other tanks are going to be doing the spotting for me. But it's really up to you. Additional grousers. One of the few tanks, one of the only premium tanks that you can get grousers for. You don't get these on a lot of tanks. I think it's only the lower tier German tanks. One thing I will say about grousers, guys, just in case you don't know, is never bother putting grousers on a tank. Even though the ground resistance is good, you can make the ground resistance better with the grousers, you've got to take the weight into consideration. So a lot of the tanks that are able to fit grousers aren't very heavy tanks. There are a lot of light tanks, a lot of medium tanks, and grousers are heavy. They weigh a ton. Literally, they weigh a ton. So putting grousers on the tank basically increases the weight of your tank by 1 ton. To get 10% better performance on soft ground or 5% better performance on moderate ground, yeah, technically it improves your ground resistance, but because the tank is now heavier, it actually reduces your ground resistance. So really putting grousers on a tank, any tank, makes absolutely no difference. In fact, it could even make it worse rather than better. So I would never ever recommend putting grousers on any tank. But yeah, if you want to experiment, go ahead. Medium caliber tank gun rammer is a definite for this tank. I really do recommend a gun rammer. This tank is very good DPM. Putting a gun rammer on it makes it 10% better, and 10% DPM is always good. Rapid firing gun, making it better, good thing. Medium Spalliner is a complete and utter waste of time on this tank. Again, it could help, but I don't think it's worth the money. And on top of that, in a future patch, these side skirts are going to become spaced armor, and you're going to be taking less damage from HE, less damage from heat shells. So I think a medium Spalliner is going to be a waste of credits as a result. Enhanced levers to increase your suspension durability, waste of time. Wet ammo rack, again, waste of time. Even if you do get ammo racked in this tank, because the rate of fire is quite good, it's not going to hurt that much. Improved vents is viable. I like improved vents because it basically helps me with my tank all around. I try and put it on as many tanks as I can if I feel there aren't better pieces of equipment. But improved vents is perfectly viable, or maybe the gun laying drive to improve your aiming speed is viable instead of vents, or even the last choice, a camo net is viable over vents. It is possible to put a camo net on this tank. So if you are playing with a budget, then Binox, Camonet, and Toolbox are very, very good on a Panzer IV's. This tank gets very, very good camo rating. I haven't actually spoken about that yet, but the Panzer IV's gets some of the best camo rating for any medium tank in the game. It gets very, very good camo rating when it's stationary, good camo rating when it moves, and good camo rating when it fires its gun. So Camonet is perfectly viable, especially if you're playing it more as a sniper. Okay folks, time for the overview game, a game where I show you as many strengths and weaknesses of whatever tank I'm reviewing in one replay. And this is a game here on Pearl River. It's a tier 6 game, so I didn't realize that when I picked this game out for the review. But I don't have time. I want to get this review out, so I don't have time to go through all the games I've played in this type to try and find some tier 7 or tier 8 games. But this game is in the review for a different reason. In the first game I showed you this tank being played as a sniper. In this game I'm going to be showing you this tank being played as a support tank. And you can see how slowly this tank accelerates. Going up a slight slope here, we were only doing 10 kilometers an hour. Really, the mobility is a big issue when you're playing this tank. So Panzer SFL 4C coming up, going to give me a little bit of a push here, which is quite nice of him. But I'm advancing with other tanks. We're going to be going down the JK lines. There's a Cromwell who's already in position. And when we get downhill, we're doing 45 kilometers an hour. So once this tank goes downhill, it does accelerate. But going uphill or trying to maneuver, or trying to accelerate from a dead spot is not good. But I'm moving up. I'm going to try and use my 8 degrees of gun depression here and just push up. And tanks are already appearing to my left, and this slow turret traverse means I'm not able to get a shot in on the Chinu. But we finally get another shot in. Now, I'm planning to work this corner. I really want to work this corner, shoot the tanks as they come around the corner. But unfortunately, this Cromwell has different ideas, and this Cromwell ends up causing me to take a lot of damage. There we go. Because that Cromwell decides that, you know what, I'm just going to drive in front of tanks that are already aiming on this corner. I had to sit out in order to get a shot in, and I got shot in the hull. I'm not going hull down. If I was able to use that corner, if I was able to go hull down, I'd be feeling much better. But I can't, because this Cromwell is being, I don't know, just tunnel visioning. But you can see that we're doing some damage. Unfortunately, I misshot in the 820 again because I'm being careful. I don't want to shoot this bloody Cromwell, but he was annoying as hell at the time. And again, because I'm taking snapshots, I'm not fully aimed because I don't want to hit the Cromwell. So he's really putting me off my game. But we're able to kill the 820. And again, I'm exposing way too much of my tank here. I'm having to pull out because I don't want to shoot this Cromwell. And there we go. I just got shot by a T-28. Yes, I just got shot by a tier 4 tank firing HE with a derp gun, and he's just done 152 damage. So this is one of the weaknesses, big weaknesses of the Panzer IV's. You get shot in the hull. If you don't go hull down, you get penned. And I wasn't hull down. The Chinu was able to pen me. But with only 30 millimeters of side armor, 20 millimeters of rear armor, even a tier 4 tank with a derp gun is able to do 152 damage to me, and I end up losing my loader because HE kills modules, it kills crew members, and that's basically a problem this tank has. Tanks firing HE at you will really hurt you. So again, this Cromwell has... he was working the corner. Now he's decided, okay, I'm on low health. I'm no longer going to work this corner. The enemy tanks have been able to move up, so missed a couple of shots on the Hellcat behind me. But you can see that the 2.3 aim time causes me a few problems. Not only Cromwell is causing me problems, but the aim time is causing me problems because snapshots, even though this is a very accurate gun, snapshots will miss if you don't fully aim. But we're going to get to see the accuracy again. We're going to get to see the rate of fire. We're able to put one into the T-67, and even though I was pretty hull down, he was still able to shoot me in the hull. This tank has no hull armor. So I know there's a T-67, a Cromwell, and a T-150 to my right. Just waiting for tanks to advance. Cromwell B is behind me. And now a Chaffee appears. And we auto-aim, and you can see the slow turret traverse, but we finally get our gun around. Miss our first shot because we weren't being fully aimed. Able to take him out with the second shot. So now, pretty soon we're going to be able to see the rate of fire and how quickly you can tear down an enemy tank. So another shot into the T-67. I decide I can take a hit. I'll take a hit in order to secure the kill. 730 hit points. That takes me down to 300. So still pretty much a 50-50 game. And there's that T-150. So there's 880 hit points available. So we're going to try and use our gun depression, or at least that was my thought, and then I decide, you know what, I'm just going to go work this corner again. So we're going to fall out. Cromwell needs some help. Reversing, reversing, reversing. First shot hits the gun mantlet, bad shot. Could have aimed a little bit lower, that was my fault. And because I missed that shot, the Cromwell's about to die. But side of the turret, no problems. Now we're aiming at weak spots. Look at this rate of fire. T-150 takes out the Cromwell, but we're able to get 2 shots in, able to get 3 shots in. T-150 should be reloaded by now, but he's advancing, he's coming around the corner. And it's amazing how often people underestimate the rate of fire of this gun. Rapid firing, accurate. Alpha damage may not be great, but that's another 460 damage done to that T-150. So, enemy RT is still in play. That's why I'm not driving around the corner until I know I've dropped off radar. 4 tanks left on the enemy team. And our T-150 in the middle is on very, very low health. So now we get to try and advance, and this is where it's not a medium tank. You can see that we're struggling to get above 20 kilometers an hour here. So even though I want to relocate, I want to try and support the T-150, I'm just not quick enough. You can't play this tank like a medium tank. It's just the maneuverability and acceleration just lack. So I know that there's a Hellcat up here. He hasn't been spotted yet, but he's going to be sitting on the ridge ahead of me. That's where they always sit, so I'm a little bit hesitant about coming around this corner. Cromwell B is advancing, so I think, I'm going to let the Cromwell B discover whether or not there's a Hellcat up here. PZSFL doesn't want to drive around the corner either, because there's almost always a tank hiding up here behind the rock. But because he hasn't fired at the PZSFL, I decide I'm going to advance. Our other tanks are advancing, and there we go, he is up there, so we get the shot in. Don't expose much of my tank, I'm trying to stay hull down. Get 1 shot into the Hellcat, and there's that accuracy again. This is probably a bad sequence of play from me. You see, I know the Hellcat's up here, and I'm thinking that the Hellcat and the Rudy that have just appeared, they've got a lot of health. They're probably going to try and flank that Cromwell B, but they don't. And I'm debating whether or not to go forward or whether to stay in case they come over the top of the ridge, and that's why I'm driving back and forward here. Also, RT is still in place, so I'm a little bit worried, but that lack of decision, or that indecision by me, basically means I'm too slow to get into position. I made a mistake, wasn't as aggressive as I should have been, and as a result, I'm just too slow to help this Cromwell B and this T-150. You can see I'm struggling up here. I'm doing 12 kilometers an hour, 15 kilometers an hour, and I can't get around to help the Cromwell B. No shots on the Hellcat. So, unfortunately, Cromwell B dies. But we're moving up. We're going to use our gun depression. As I say, this tank has surprisingly good gun depression. Couldn't save the T-150 either, but move up. We've got the gun depression. We've got the accuracy. We killed the Rudy. Just 2 tanks left on the enemy team. That's the Hellcat and RT. So I'm moving in. I'm going to pretend I'm going one way, then move the other way, just in case I've dropped off radar. So I know there's a Hellcat above me. I know there's RT, and if I was RT, I would be pre-aimed on this corner. As you see, I'm not using Sixth Sense, don't have a very good crew in this tank. So I'm kind of trying to second guess, but if I was RT, I'd be pre-aiming on this corner, but don't need to worry about the Hellcat anymore. The Tog takes him out from the middle, so just RT left, and I know I would be, if I was RT, this corner would be pre-aimed, so I let the PZSFL 4C go first. Unfortunately, RT wasn't setting up an ambush, he wasn't pre-aimed, and this was another mistake by me because it just cost me another kill and more damage. Because this PZSFL is much faster than I am, I just don't have the acceleration. So I can't wrap up at the end of games. This is not a good tank for wrapping up at the end of games either. So too slow, too unmaneuverable. PZSFL gets the kill, and I miss out on a kill and damage. So that was an ace tanker in the PZ4S. We also picked up a top gun. We finished top on XP with 1050 XP, 1606 damage, and that was less damage than I did in the first game. But the difference was, in the first game I was playing passively. I was playing this tank as a sniper. I was letting my team spot the enemy tanks for me, and I was doing the damage, but I was sharing that XP with the tanks that were spotting. In this game, I was playing as a support tank. I always had tanks around me. I was advancing with other tanks. I was never alone, and we ended up spotting our own targets, so less damage but more XP, and we finished up with 6 kills as a result. But I think this game was a very good game as an overview game, because I got to show you literally all the strengths and weaknesses of the tank. The strengths, the maneuverability was poor. You saw poor acceleration trying to get into position at the beginning of the game. You saw poor acceleration and maneuverability at the end of the game when I was trying to hunt down the arty. I just wasn't quick enough to get into the tank into a position to shoot him or do some more damage at the end of the game. You also saw me basically losing 2 allies because I was either indecisive or I was too slow moving the tank into position. So 2 Cromwells died as a result of the lack of maneuverability, lack of acceleration of this tank. So yeah, it's not a very maneuverable tank, and sometimes if you do play aggressively or more aggressively, you are going to find yourself having to relocate because one flank has collapsed and the tank just not having the speed to do it. The speed is an issue when you're playing the PZ4S, but you also got to see the lack of armor. Even though it's probably on paper the best armored tier 6 premium medium tank, anything that shot me in the hull penned, because I wasn't able to go hull down on the corner like I wanted to. I had a very annoying Cromwell friendly teammate who caused me to have to show or expose my hull. Pretty much any shot that fired and hit my hull penetrated. I don't think I bounced any shots in that particular game. So the hull armor is very poor. You have to be able to go hull down. And also, you got to see the very, very poor side armor. Only 30mm of side armor, and as a result, a T-28, a tier 4 tank with a derp gun, was able to shoot and do full damage on the side of my tank, because this tank has no side armor at the moment. Now in the future, those side panels or the side skirting will be made spaced armor, but not at the moment. Tanks firing HE will hit and do full damage even if they are lower tier, but you can see why RT likes targeting PZ4Ss, why it's a one-hit kill to KV2s. HE will really mess up the tank, and I did lose a gunner from that one shot from HE from a T-28. But you did get to see some strengths. You got to see the gun, which is this tank's biggest strength. The view range isn't too bad, but I didn't get to show it off in that game. But the accuracy was very, very good. We fired 20, we hit 17, so I missed a couple of shots because I wasn't fully aimed, but that's a problem with every single tank. The accuracy was very good. The rate of fire was exceptionally good. You got to see me being able to put in 3 shots into a T-150 after he just fired before he could reload, and then take him out with the 4th shot. So the rate of fire is very, very good, even though the alpha damage is not fantastic. It's also a very, very good moneymaker. Again, we made 44,000 credits with a premium account, and the ammo costs, even though we fired 20, only came to 2,000 credits. The repair costs for the tank are very, very good as well. I lost half my hit points in that game, and we still only ended up paying 1,600 credits for repair costs. So it's a good moneymaker. It's a good crew trainer. It can be played as a sniper, or it can be played as a support tank. The maneuverability is poor, the hull armor is poor, but the gun is great, and it can go hull down. The turret armor is pretty good. Okay folks, time to sum up. Is the Panzer IV-S worth 3,750 gold? Well, the tank does have quite a lot of strengths, and probably its biggest strength is its gun. It's the standard 75mm L70, so it gets a nice rate of fire, it gets good penetration for a tier 6. The alpha damage is a little bit low, but it makes up for that with its rate of fire. The accuracy is very, very good on the tank. It is definitely a sniper, and even in a tier 8 game, you will be able to snipe weak spots with this gun. The aim time could be better, but it's not terrible. But a couple of other things about the gun I haven't mentioned is the tank's camo rating is quite good, especially when on the move or stationary. When firing, it's still okay for a medium tank, and it gets 8 degrees of gun depression. Forgot to mention that. How could I have forgotten to mention that? 8 degrees of gun depression all round. So this is a hill warrior. You can go hull down, you can use slopes to your advantage and use its 8 degrees of gun depression. It also gets 60 rounds of ammo, so you don't run out of ammunition in this tank very much. The DPM on the tank is very, very good. It's about 1800 with a 100% crew, but when you put equipment and crew skills in there, or include equipment and crew skills, you can get the DPM up close to about 2000. So I think the tank, especially its gun, is very, very good. It does have some other strengths as well. The turret armor is exceptionally good. Go hull down, as I say, use it as a hill warrior. You've got 150 millimeters of frontal turret armor. Now it is flat, and higher tier tanks aren't really going to care about your 150 millimeters, but you can actually go hull down. It's not that big a target. At distance, it's going to be quite hard to hit, and you'd be surprised at just how bouncy. You've got very, very angled sides. The turret armor is pretty good on a Panzer IV's. It also gets very, very good view range and very, very good signal range. Unfortunately, the tank also has quite a few weaknesses, and the biggest weakness for me has to be its mobility. It only gets a 300 horsepower engine, and the power to weight ratio is very, very poor. So even though on paper the top speed is quite good at 48 kilometers an hour, you're never going to reach that speed easily unless you're going downhill. So the tank is sluggish, and that means that you're not going to be able to play it like a traditional medium tank. It's not fast enough. It can cause problems if you're on one flank and the other flank collapses. Sometimes the tank is not fast enough to relocate in order to help the other flank. On occasion, I've advanced down one flank, we started getting capped, and the tank was just not fast enough to get back and decap. So the speed is a major, major issue in this tank. But in addition to the lack of acceleration and the lack of mobility, you've also got very, very slow traverse speed. You've also got extremely slow turret traverse speed. This is a medium tank that other medium tanks can actually circle to death. So it is definitely not a medium tank you can play as a medium tank. It's just too slow, too sluggish, turns too poorly, and you can't track fast-moving targets if they get in close with your turret. So it can be quite a pain to play. It's very difficult to play this like a medium tank, even though technically it's a medium tank. Another weakness for the tank is its hull armor. Technically, the turret armor is very, very good, but the hull armor is actually very, very poor. Yes, these side skirts don't actually perform any function at the moment, but they will be spaced armor in a future patch. However, at the moment, the side of the tank is only 30 millimeters thick. The rear of the tank is only 20 millimeters thick. 8 tanks firing HE are going to completely mess you up, and for example, RT or a KV2 is going to be able to one-hit kill you. So the hull armor, even though on paper, as I showed, is actually better than all the other tier 6 premium medium tanks, at least from the front, it's also very, very flat. So you're not going to get any bonus from angling this tank. It's basically, you do not want to get shot in this tank. The armor is not very good. So getting caught out in the open is bad news, and because the tank is so sluggish, if you do get caught out in the open, you're pretty much a dead tank. It's very, very rare that you're actually going to bounce any shots with the hull of this tank. Now, it is possible to angle, it is possible to side scrape a little bit, but I really, really don't recommend it. You've only got 30 millimeters of side armor, so even side scraping, a lot of tanks are going to be able to overmatch the side armor. You've really got to keep the hull of this tank hidden, and you've constantly got to play it more passively as a support and try and use terrain features to keep it hidden. So it's not the easiest tank to play. It's a medium tank that is not a medium tank. You can't play it like a traditional medium tank. However, this tank does make credits. It's actually a very, very good credit maker, because this gun can damage Tier 6, Tier 7 and Tier 8 tanks with a little bit of knowledge. If you know how to aim for weak spots, then you can do damage against Tier 8s. So the gun will make you money, and it's also a very, very good crew trainer. Like most German medium tanks, it's a perfect crew trainer for the original line of German tanks, and it's a very good crew trainer for the newer line of German medium tanks up to the Leopard 1. You're just going to need an extra radio operator, but you should have one of those lying around anyway. So overall, I think the strengths of this tank balance out the weaknesses, and it leaves this tank basically very, very average. I would call this a very average tank. It's not special. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's very good. I think it's very average. I think if you're going to be a tank collector, you're probably going to want to buy it before it's removed. But if you're not a tank collector and you want to pick up a German premium medium tank, then I would advise maybe saving some money and buying a T25 at tier 5 instead, even though it's a tier lower. I think the T25 is just a lot more fun to play and it's a lot more flexible. On the other hand, the Panzer IV-S is not bad, but if you like playing medium tanks, if you're a medium tank player and you like the versatility of medium tanks, then I think you're going to hate the Panzer IV-S, because this tank is not versatile. It is... Yes, you can play it as a sniper. Yes, you can play it as a support tank. But when I say it's not versatile, it means you cannot react to what's happening on the battlefield. If you've got a bad team, a Panzer IV-S is not going to allow you to carry the game. It's just not fast enough. It's just not quick enough. It's not maneuverable enough. If your team go one flank and the enemy come the other flank, the tank is not quick enough to adapt. You're not quick enough to get into sniping positions or medium tank positions early in a game. You're not quick enough to get out of a position. If you're going to be overrun, you can't run away in a Panzer IV-S. So it's not a very versatile tank. And I think if I were to try and describe how this tank plays, I wouldn't recommend it for anyone who likes playing medium tanks. However, I would probably recommend it to someone who likes playing a tank like the Jackson, yes, a TD, because when you put things into context, I think the Panzer IV-S is more like a tank destroyer than it is a medium tank. You see, forget about hit points. They both weigh about the same. The Jackson gets more engine power, but it gets a slightly slower top speed. And considering this tank never reaches its top speed in the first place, I think maybe they perform a little bit more similarly. But you look at the traverse speed on the tanks, you've got it's a faster traverse speed on the hull that the Jackson gets. The turret traverse speed is almost twice as good as the turret traverse speed on the Jackson, but it's still very, very poor for the Panzer IV-S. The signal view range is the same, the signal range is the same, and the camo rating on the PC4S is very, very good for a medium tank. It's actually closer to a tank destroyer than a medium tank. So you've got a good gun on a slow-moving turret on a sluggish tank with decent turret armor. The gun mantlet on the Jackson is surprisingly troll, and the turret armor on the PC4S is 120. You've got 10 degrees of gun depression on a Jackson. You've got 8 degrees of gun depression on a Schmalterm. You can use them hull down. You can use them on hills as hill warriors. I think these two tanks play much like each other. You don't go charging in a Jackson. You don't go trying to flank enemy tanks or circling. You don't try and circle enemy tanks to death in a Jackson. You don't try and do that in a PZ4S either. The tank is just not as fast and maneuverable. But I think if you like playing a tank maybe like the Wolverine or the Jackson, you like maybe using its maneuverability when it needs to be moved, but basically playing it as a sniper, playing it as a support, playing it like a tank destroyer, I think you're going to enjoy playing the PC4S, because that's something it does very, very well. So is the PC4S worth 3,750 gold? Well, if you want to buy a medium tank, probably not. I would say it's not worth 3,750 gold if you like medium tank gameplay, because it's not a medium tank. You're going to be playing it just like you'd play a turreted TD. However, if you like playing turreted TDs, then the Panzer IV-S is probably worth 3,750 gold. Just don't be disappointed if you buy it as a medium tank and discover it can't do it very well. But it does have a great gun, it does have a good turret, you can go hull down, it can be fun to play. It's not a tank I play very often. There are a lot of other tier 6 medium tanks I'd rather play. If you're looking for a crew trainer and a money maker for German medium tanks, it's not bad. I think it's okay. I think the T25 is probably a little bit better, even though it's a tier lower, but it's not bad. If you're looking for a tier 6 medium tank, then I think tanks like maybe the Fury or definitely the Rudy or the Cromwell B are much, much better. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.